Hello everyone, and welcome to today's webinar titled Marketing Authorization Procedures in Light of the EU Pharmaceutical Legislation Reform. We are glad to have you here with us. My name is Adela Kadrick, Brand and Communications Senior Manager, your host today. Firstly, I would like to share a couple of words about PrimeVigilance. PrimeVigilance, an Ergomed company, delivers global solutions for clinical safety and post-marketing pharmacovigilance, as well as medical information from our operational hubs based in Europe, the USA, and Japan. Before we commence, I'd like to run through a couple of quick housekeeping matters. Firstly, we expect this webinar presentation to run for approximately 45 minutes, allowing for a short amount of time for questions and answers at the end. And secondly, we would like to welcome all our listeners to send us questions at any point throughout the presentation. You can do so by typing them into the Q&A section available on your screen. And now I am pleased to introduce you to our expert speakers who will be guiding us through this webinar. Marina Pereira Ramos has been working as a Senior Regulatory Affairs Specialist in the MAA and Maintenance Unit since 2022. She also performs the roles of local contact person for regulatory affairs and person responsible for local screenings. Katarina Petrusova has joined the company in 2013 and currently holds the position of Associate Director of Regulatory Affairs in the MAA and Maintenance Unit. On the local level, Katarina acts as the local contact person for regulatory affairs with the State Institute for Drug Control in the Czech Republic, as well as the local contact person for pharmacovigilance and as the person responsible for local screening. I will now let our first speaker take over.
Thank you very much, Adela, for introducing us and the topics. Hello, everyone. My name is Katarina, and let's start with outlining the topics for today and what we will walk you through today in this webinar. We will first start with setting the grounds with presenting the history of European pharmaceutical legislation and where we are now, what is the current legislation. Then we will discuss the need for the reform, discussing the future strategy, how this will be delivered via the four-part package, what to expect when, time-wise, and what are the four key political objectives, discussing the current and proposed regulatory mechanisms in Europe. And then I will give a word to my colleague Marina, and she will focus on the impact on marketing authorization procedures, taking you from the general impact via some more specialized topics such as environmental risk assessment, orphan medicines, and pediatrics. So let's start and let's discuss the history. This slide presents what has happened so far within European pharmaceutical legislation. You can read it from the left to right, going up and down, and you can really see that we have gone a long way from the unfortunate thalidomide tragedy at the end of the 1950s, beginning of 60s. This has really proven the need for evidence-based authorizations, and we start to see the first marketing authorizations, approved medicine before they reach the patients in the mid-1960s. Then European Medicines Agency and centralized procedure are present from the mid-1950s. And along as the time goes, we have seen the last major revision at the beginning of the millennium, 2004. And this has been 20 years ago. In the meantime, we have also seen specialized legislation on rare diseases, advanced therapy medicines, medicines for children, and so on. We have seen legislation on falsified medicines prevention. We have seen legislation for pharmacovigilance. On the right-hand side, you can see a big lesson learned, big challenge. This was the 2020 COVID crisis. We have faced challenges, but we have learned a lot. This all resulted in the reform of the General Pharmaceutical Act 2021. And we are now in a follow-up, and we are going to see another reform. So what is going to change? What is this going to be? This is going to affect the directives and regulations. What you see on this slide is the complete life cycle of a medicinal product, from the research to the post-marketing and variations. What you can spot that in several areas, we can see Directive 2001/83, and you can see a Regulation 726/2004. These are parts of the general pharmaceutical legislation, which are going to face a major revision. Also, what we are going to see is a revision of a more specific, specialized legislation, and this is for pediatric medicines and orphan medicines, rare diseases. At this point, I would like to say that in our presentation, we are focusing on regulatory affair aspects and regulatory processes. We are not that much focusing on pharmacovigilance. And this is both for the fact that currently, at this point, from the information which is currently available, we do not see, and we haven't seen a lot of discussion and a lot of impact on pharmacovigilance. Let's see what the future brings as the frameworks become more concrete. We will see. But for now, we will focus on regulatory aspects, and we will also focus on marketing authorization. I would like to say that the revision is immense, it's huge, and for sure there would be topics, and we could pick other topics which would well deserve a webinar or discussion on its own. So now let's go into what the future holds. The future of European pharmaceutical legislation should be future-proof. We should have learned from the crisis. The future legislation should be crisis-resistant, and above all, it should be patient-centered. The new legislation and the new pharmaceutical strategy should support industry, research, and development. Yes, of course, but above all, it should serve the patients so that the medicines are reachable, accessible. They can reach patients regardless of where you live in Europe. You should have access to medicines in a timely manner. And we should have also learned from previous mishaps and market failures. And we should also look whether all the therapeutic needs of the patients are addressed. So how is this strategy going to happen? How is this going to be delivered? So the mirror image in the legislation, the tangible pieces of legislation are presented on the right-hand side, and they are so-called the four-part package. So above everything, you have umbrella communication explaining, the European bodies explain what is going to happen and why, what is the rationale. And also they are taking action with recommendations. For example, antimicrobial resistance, which is a great challenge we are facing and we need to address. And how this will be translated, it will appear as new regulation and new directive within the legislative pieces. The idea behind is to ensure access to affordable medicines for patients which address their medical needs, unmet needs, high medical needs, everything from this area, that we tackle antimicrobial resistance and we are prepared for future crises. European legislative environment should also be more flexible, more competitive, ensuring Europe's stronger position within pharmaceutical markets. Okay, but when is this going to happen? Obviously, the discussions are going on already, and in April 2023, you have noticed published proposals published by European Commission. Well, but now we are a year after. We are now in April 2024, and now we are expecting the readings. If everything goes well, by the end of 2024, the earliest, the negotiations should be completed and there should be a general agreement on the approach. If everything goes well, the adoption is possible for 2025, and when this can be applied, expected to be applied, is 2026 and 2027. These are the rough estimates. This is where we are now. But a lot depends also whether the steps can be adopted in time before and with the current parliament. There are European Parliament elections in 2024. So this might cause delays. We will see. Yes, but there already is a need for swift and streamlined processes. And this shows, for example, in post-marketing, in variation legislation, guidances, and so on. So you might have noticed that already there is going on a variation legislation, variation classification update. My colleague Marina will speak about this soon, but the point is that this is a developing environment, this is a developing situation, and it's great and advisable to follow European Commission website for updates to see where we are. The latest news is that we are expecting April readings of the Parliament, and now we are discussing update of variations. Okay, let's talk about what is going to happen, and it's the objectives, what we aim to do, what Europe aims to do and to achieve. It is 6 key political objectives, which can be summarized as triple A's, and the triple A's, it's access, availability, and affordability, which are in the focus and in the center of attention. Also, it is creating more competitive regulatory framework in reality, and how this can impact the daily work of regulatory affairs specialists, of marketing authorization holders. This should be a significant improvement and reduction in administrative burden, more swift action, faster procedures, and so on. Having the big picture in our minds, these objectives also include environmental sustainability and addressing antimicrobial resistance and the presence of pharmaceuticals in the environment. I will now walk you through the individual objectives in more details, giving you examples relevant, for example, for your work of a regulatory affairs specialist. Let's start with the triple A's, and namely with access. So what changes we will be facing? We will be shifting from the approach of one size fits all to more tailored approach. And we will see this in the approach to data protection and market protection. So where we are now? We are now at 8 years of data protection and 2 years of data protection. Okay, but the future and the proposal is to only have 6 years of data protection and 2 years of market protection, plus conditional prolongations. Okay, but how is this good for anyone? Well, as a generic company, you can get rights to access earlier. Okay, fine. And this will also benefit the patients because a medicine, generic alternative, will be available to them faster. Yes, but how does this incentivize the innovators? It does, because you can get additional market you can get additional exclusivities and additional protection, in a sense that if you give more, you get more protection. So instead of current 10, you can get to 12 years of protection. And the additional protective periods can be if you conduct comparative clinical trials, if you launch your medicine everywhere. So patients in the end will benefit because the innovative medicine will be made available to them wherever they live, in whatever member state they live. Also, and we had this when you introduce a new indication. So this is supposed to benefit both patients having access to innovative medicines, but also generic alternatives, but also benefit the industry, who can explore this, and when they deliver more, they can get more from the protection, from current 10 to the future 12 years. Let's go to the other ACE, which is availability and affordability. Availability, it's about managing the shortages and supply. And here, Europe is going to take more organized, more harmonized, and more centralized and coordinated approach to monitoring and taking preventive action. So, for example, there is supposed to be shortage prevention plan. It's a new tool. Affordability is about the budgets. And again, here we see the interlink with the access. So the proposed status will serve for earlier market entry of generics, biosimilars, to increase competition and reduce prices. We will also see harmonization. With all the AAAs, we will see harmonization across the discrepancies between different national approaches, bearing in mind that this European pharmaceutical legislation aims to create strong and single common market for medicines. Here, I'm getting almost to the end of my part of the presentation, and I will present the remaining 3 political objectives. It is about environmental sustainability, and as regulatory affairs specialists, marketing authorization holders with well-established portfolio, or with medicines which have been on the market for some, or in general, for medicines that have already been on the market for some time. What might impact you is the extension of the requirement to provide environmental risk assessment for your older medicines, which have been placed to the market before 2005. Another practical thing with recent developments, with recent way of living, is the switch to electronic product information and leaflets. So this is also part of environmental sustainability. A big challenge is the antimicrobial resistance, and combating this is one of the objectives. An interesting tool which is being discussed and introduced is the institution, or the tool of transferable exclusivity vouchers. This topic, again, would deserve a seminar on its own. I want to end my part of the presentation with looking into regulatory framework improvements, streamlines. And my colleague Marina will take it from there. But what the general idea is making Europe more competitive. Currently, we see quite large approval times compared to other regions. So we will see a cut down on the time the procedure takes. We will also see more pre-authorization support. What is still being debated is some kind of regulatory sandbox, making the initial approach more accessible for companies, supporting them more, supporting them better at earlier times, giving feedback, but both ways, from the agencies, but also use of data from the industry and to the regulators. So the general idea is also to support pre-submission, and also, as we are already in the procedures, we will most likely see changes to, for example, clock stops. The idea is to make the regulatory framework more competitive, more swift, less bureaucratic, with less administrative burden. The specific examples will now be given to you by my colleague Marina. Off to you, Marina.
Thank you, Katarina. Good afternoon to all. We will now take a brief look on a couple of measures that directly impact the registration procedure of the medicines. The measures that have a general impact are, for example, the European Medicines Agency structure, with the aim to be more efficient and strong. The five committees currently available will be reduced to two committees. CHMP and the Prague committee will remain, and then there will be working parties with pool of experts, with the representatives of patient health care professionals. Also, another impact it's or another measure is the strengthening the early regulatory support by the agency for unmet medical needs or medicines that represent a major therapeutic innovation. Another measure will be to facilitate the use of real world evidence. Um, Data from healthcare that will also allow the reassessment of the medicine. The abolish of marketing authorization renewals in most cases for generics and biosimilars. The accelerated assessment for medicinal products, which are of major interest from the point of view of the public health. Allow marketing authorization in exceptional circumstances, and for MRP and DCPs, the applicant will inform all the member states of its application, with the aim that the member states that are not considered the member state concerned may request to enter the procedure related to public health grounds. It will be they named it as the opt-in. Related to application file, the measures, one of the measures is the possibility of the agency to review data in phases. This was a lesson learned from the COVID-19 pandemic, and the information will be provided as they become available as a rolling phased review, and this will speed up the procedure. Also, the enforcement of electronic submission of applications. This means simpler procedures and lower costs, because it is much more easy to do, for example, corrections in electronically instead of paper correction. And also this has also the aim of sustainability, to avoid more paper. Another measure is the use of electronic product information and multi-languages packages to facilitate the marketing of medicines in all member states, and as well as a sustainability measure. For off-patent medicines, it not will be required the submission of pharmacovigilance risk management plan, and will be also a decentralized manufacturing. This is applicable for novel technologies where the manufacturing steps needs to be performed very close to the patients. So it will not be required separate manufacturing authorizations, but will be centralized only in one. In also the evaluation and construction of active substance master file to avoid duplication of assessment of chemical active substances. In terms of approvals, we can divide some measures as for centralized procedure and for DCP and MRP procedures. So for centralized procedure, there will be the possibility of the regulators to reject immature applications. This is because of long clock stops that delay the decision. The reduction of assessment and approval time from 277 days to 226 days. Basically, what will be reduced is the scientific assessment that will be changed from 210 days to 180 days and to 150 days for accelerated procedure. Also, the approval will be reduced to 46 days. And the other aim is to simplify the requirements for the authorization of generics and biosimilars medicines. For DCP and MRP procedures, as made for the centralized procedure, there will be the possibility to terminate the procedure in 90 days if the application dossier is not of sufficient quality or mature for the completion of the examination. Also here, it will be a shortening of duration of the procedure in 180 days. The shortened deadline will be for agreement, 60 days. Deadline for evaluation remains the assessment. And also the simplification of the repeat use procedure. In this case, if the member states do not request the update of the assessment report, the RMS will provide the report within 30 days. As part of the pharmaceutical strategy for Europe, within the regulatory framework, also a revision of the rules on variations was initiated, as already mentioned by Catarina. That's the variation framework. And recently, on this last March 2024, the Commission published a staff working document, which presents the main challenges of the current variation framework and describe the main improvements to this variation framework. Basically, the aim is to make the life cycle management of the medicines more efficient and better adapted to the modern context, accelerate the processing of variations and provide benefit for both marketing authorization holders and regulatory authorities. This is due to recent scientific and technological advancements, and also due to the increase of number of variations requests. And how this will be made by reducing the administrative burden and costs, by reclassifying the same variations into lower categories, or introduction of additional flexibility, for example, the level of technical information, clarification of the changes and data to be communicated to the authorities, reduce the single submission or the notification of variations by grouping and the work sharing procedures, extend the risk-based approach to variations categorization to certain biological medicinal products, and update the rules on these products and the active substances. Also, the veterinary medicinal products will be, the references to veterinary medicinal products will be removed from the guidance, and there will be also an update of the variations for vaccines. Under the measures applicable for environment sustainability, there will be a change in the environmental risk assessment. The main change will be to implement stronger rules on this assessment. So the applicant will prepare the assessment, the environmental risk assessment, plus such requirements that will be mandatory and that will be defined by the agency according to scientific guidelines to be defined. Anytime there will be new information, it will be needed or it will be considered the update of this assessment. It will be established specific requirements for the environmental risk assessment for generic, hybrid, biosimilar, and biohybrid medicinal products. There will be the possibility of marketing authorization refusal if the assessment is incomplete, insufficiently substantiated, or if the identified risks have not been sufficiently addressed. There will be also obligation to conduct post-authorization assessment studies at the time of marketing authorization and after authorization. And in the assessment report, it will be included a summary of the environmental risk assessment, unless it is made public in the Union by different means. Also related to antimicrobial resistance, it will be add a risk for AMR selection to the environment due to manufacturing, use, and disposal of antimicrobials into the protection goals of the assessment. And there will be also grounds for suspension, for a variation, for a revocation of a marketing authorization, and the prohibition of the supply of the medicine in case there will be environmental concerns. Related to orphan medicines, the competence will be moved from the Commission to the European Agency. This is related to the update of the structure of the agency. It will be implemented a validity of the orphan designation to 7 years, that it is not established currently. Related to the criteria of the prevalence, the criteria of of no insufficient return criteria or sufficient profitability will be deleted. Um, Specific criteria for orphan drug designation for scientific reasons by delegated act when prevalence criteria is not appropriated. It will be also added the definition of high unmet medical needs concept only for rare diseases, and related to market exclusivity change. The change, the main change is the market exclusivity will be from 10 to 9 years. Then for high unmet medical needs concept, if these conditional extensions will be possible, it will have a plus 1 year of market exclusivity. For well-established medicines, it will have 5 years of market exclusivity. To note that well-established use products do not benefit from data protection, as literature-based applications are not protected by data protection. Related to data protection, it will be of 6 years as for all medicines, but will only benefit of 1 year of market launch. At least at the final measure, it will be created global market exclusivity for products with the same active substance. Several measures are also intended to apply for pediatric, and we would like to emphasize the main ones, such, for example, the compulsory for centralized marketing authorization procedures for pediatric use marketing authorizations medicines, which is optional for pediatric only medicines products. Simplified pediatric investigation plan, mandatory investigation plan on the basis of the mechanism of action of a medicinal product for the same therapeutic area, temporary waivers from the pediatric investigation plan obligation during public health emergencies for medicines relevant for this type of emergencies. Limitation to the length of deferrals, EMA responsibility for agreeing on the investigation plan, and when appropriate, CHMP for PIP compliance. Also, 6 months of SPC extension following the pediatric investigation plan completion, also for orphan medicines. And finally, increased transparency on the pediatric investigation plan conducted for discontinued medicines. For example, the financial issues of the company. And these are the main topics that we considered that will have more impact has in regulatory applications. I will now turn over for our moderates and for Q&As.
Thank you very much, Marina and Katerina, for a very helpful and informative presentation. In the meantime, we have collected some questions from our audience and will do our best to address a couple of them right now. Our first question reads, Can you give more specific examples for the changes to variations? For example, biologics, type IA, groupings, and similar?
Thank you, Adela. I will handle this question. Some examples on the changes or variations are related to biological medicines, vaccines, and medical devices, as well as the type 1 variations and grouping and work sharing. Related to biological medicines, it is still considered that type 2 variations by default, but due to increased knowledge and experience, the intention is to remove this type 2 classification, and with specific restrictions that prevent the use of the type 1A variation category. So the aim is to to propose changes on the classification on biologics. Related to vaccines, it is related to vaccine strain updates that are currently made by extension, and the aim is to follow this procedure as a lower category. For medical devices, that are considered part of the marketing authorization dossier, the variations for combinations of medicinal products and medical device. The aim is to update the regulation, taking into account the device related variation could be also submitted under different non-device specific scopes depending on the change. For type 1A variations, the aim is to group these variations with the aim to reducing the number of individual submissions. Also, grouping and work sharing will be revised, and work sharing variations will become mandatory national procedures. And that's it.
Thank you,
With
Marina.
some.
Our next question is, what could be the impact of the new legislation on product information and labels?
Thank you, Adela. I will also take this one. So the aim is there will be changes on legislation and on the legislation on the product information and labels, and the aim is basically to incentive the use of electronic product information and multi-language packages. The better use of this product information electronic format could facilitate the delivery of information on the medicine to healthcare professionals and patients in the Europe multilingual environment, and support wider availability of medicines across member states. And of course, there is also the measure related to sustainability and avoid the use of paper. And
Th-
basically, this is.
Thank you again, Marina. Our next question reads, does the discussed EU pharmaceutical reform impact veterinary medicines as well?
I can take this. This is Katarina speaking. This is a short one, and it's no, and it's because there is a veterinary legislation on its own, and I think it's 2019 when regulation was published, and it repealed the directive 2001. And also we see in the current efforts that mentions of veterinary medicinal products are being deleted and removed from the updates on variations. So this would be my answer. No.
Thank you, Katarina. Our final question for today is as follows. What exactly is meant by the four-part package? What are the four elements? Where can we see the news related to this topic, and what is in the pipeline?
Okay, I can also take this, and it basically counts like two legislative proposals, and one is a proposal to update the directive, basically with all the requirements on authorization, labeling, protection, placing on the market, and procedures. So one would be new directive, the second would be new regulation, which would be more specific, for example, setting out the EMA governance or specific rules such as for orphans and antimicrobials. So this would be two legislative parts. When I have mentioned antimicrobials, it would also be the third part would be recommendation, council recommendation on this. And an example from here would be that there have been specific targets for antimicrobials use already set and how this will be reinforced on national level. So this is the number 3. And an overreaching number 4 is all the communications, explaining why this is happening, how and when I'm at when this is happening. This would also be my recommended source, and it's the website of European Commission. And I would emphasize this because it's not only a good source of fact sheet, but also of the most current press release, so you can keep yourself up to date with when it's actually happening. This is my answer for this one.
Thank you very much once more, Marina and Katerina, for sharing your expertise and insights with us. Unfortunately, this is all the time we have for today. I'd like to extend our gratitude to our speakers and our engaged audience. Rest assured, we will take the time to reply via email to all outstanding questions, ensuring that no query goes unanswered. As a reminder, this webinar will soon be available to watch on demand on the PrimeVigilance website. This concludes our webinar session. Thank you very much for joining us today, and until next time.